Buddy. My name is Jabari John, and I am the sports psychologist consultant that will be working with you all today. I know that we have the men's national senior football team with us today. So welcome everybody. And today we'll be looking at the topic of self-efficacy and confidence in sport. So let me just share my screen very quickly so that we can get right in the topic that we have. So as we said, confidence and self-efficacy. And honestly, at this level, physical ability is not the issue. Most of the times, is this that mental side that really sets players apart from the others. So that is why today the topic, um, especially that seeing that we are facing low confidence as well as low self-efficacy within the team, we definitely saw that it was right or fit for us to definitely take a deep dive into this topic. So we're just going to look at some tools to help build this self-efficacy and really understand what it is. So, of course, starting according to Bandura, what self-efficacy is. And this can be described as a person's belief or capability to either organize, execute the actions needed to achieve a specific task or a specific goal. So, really and truly, this is your belief in yourself, or you can say. And we also have another definition by Phelps, which described this as one of the most influential psychological constructs in sport. And really and truly, that's because self-efficacy helps grows your motivation. It helps grows persistence, emotions as well in terms of processing on and off the field. And that is something that is very important. Moving on to the other reason. So as I mentioned, in terms of effort, persistence, resilience, motivation, it directly affects how you as an athlete perform or how you work, um, your persistence, as well as how you respond to setbacks. So what we tend to notice is players with a higher self-efficacy, they often aren't afraid of difficult challenges. They cope better with pain. They also push through setbacks a lot better than others. Um, and then you tend to see players who have a little bit more lower self-efficacy. They tend to put out less effort when they're on the field. Their performance reflects as well. They tend to run from challenges, anything that might be too difficult, whether it be too much of cardio or too hard of a shooting drill, whatever the case might be. You tend to see these players are the ones that kind of shy away from that challenge and stay within their comfort zone. And of course, as you can imagine, that would not be very beneficial as it relates to the progression as an overall player. And moving on to Bandura's four sources. So Bandura mentioned that there are four different ways that we gain these self-efficacy, sorry. So of course, starting firstly with mastery experiences. So that first one, as you mentioned, is kind of like past performance accomplishments. So what that really is the more that you do a task, the more that you train on a specific skill, he more or less suggests that's the first way and the most actually effective way in terms of gaining self-efficacy. And of course, the opposite of that, failure within that task often drops. So what that means, for example, um, the more that you do the task, whether it be in training, when it's time for the game, then you are now able to properly apply what you would have been practicing. Practice makes perfect, more or less. Then we have vicarious experiences. So this is watching teammates or even other skilled professionals perform a task, and that really creates the thought in your mind that this is actually doable. I can actually do this. And that is the second thing that you mentioned. Then we have verbal persuasion. So this is where the coaches is a very important part. Coaches, managers, or even more experienced players on the team influence the others and provide that verbal persuasion, tips on how players can improve, whether it be positioning of body, effort, run up, all these different things. And this is where that verbal persuasion really comes in and helps a lot. And then finally, we have the physiological or emotional state. What that really is we have these natural body systems, the way our body responds. So we release things like adrenaline, sometimes even cortisol. Those are just bodies body things that we probably would have heard of before. But what those things really do affect things like our breathing, also our heart rate. Oftentimes, when these things are activated, people interpret it as stress or even fear. And of course, that's natural human systems, but the idea behind this is how we interpret these things. If we look at it from a place of our body being ready for whatever it is we are facing, then that would reflect a lot better in terms of how we perform, how we yeah, and how we just look at the situation or that is in front of us. So the idea definitely we want to do is reframe how we look up those things. And also building on that self-efficacy, there's also another researcher by the name of Vili that spoke to sport confidence. And what that really is quite similar, but made a specific mention of two types. That being trade sport confidence, which is usually a little bit more specific as it relates to certain situations, sorry. Whereas the state is a little bit more specific. So from moment to moment, um, it depends on highly depend on the environment as well as perceived readiness, while traits being more general. And of course, together with Bandura, those two really describes overall things like hesitation within the game. So, for example, in a high stress environment, sorry, um, where a player might hesitate for a second, and that is sometimes he might be lacking state specific state confidence. So in that moment of two attackers coming and he has to make a split second decision to where to pass the ball, he might be lacking in that specific scenario or that specific moment. So working on things like that would definitely build his confidence and self-efficacy as it relates to the overall game. Moving on now to how it affects performance. So there was a meta-analysis done that really showed a moderate positive link between self-efficacy and performance. So what that really means is it can be said that self-efficacy is like a cycle. It influences your motivation or fuels motivation. And then when you're motivated, of course, the type of goals that you have in mind and the what you strive for is a lot better or higher. Then of course motivation will then influence your behavior. So from there, you start acting or carrying yourself in a certain way that aligns with your goals. And that's where the motivation comes in. And then finally, that motivation, it bleeds over into your into the outcomes. So once your behavior aligns with your goals and you have what you would like to accomplish, then your outcomes or your performance relates that. So of course, the more motivated, the higher your goals are, the more that you push yourself would, of course, lead over into um, your performance. And just to reiterate, sorry, again, that high belief brings about things like consistency, persistence, resilience under pressure. And that was also something that was mentioned by Moritz. Those things, the consistency, persistence, all are a result of self-efficacy and high self-efficacy. So just to give a quick example of what we spoke about in terms of the mastery, looking at a 30-meter lob pass. First, you have the mastery part of it, where you drill it consistently in training over and over until you build that mastery or that confidence of consistently doing this. That will give you the confidence of, if the situation arises, I can do this. Then we have the vicarious experience, so seeing your teammates or watching some videos on a more experienced person do it. Then we have the verbal cues, so the coach gives tips on how to improve. So not only from a negative place, but also a positive standpoint where they praise on what was done correctly, but also provide the fundamental things that you need to complete that action. And finally, arousal, as we said, how you interpret what is going on in your body. And of course, the result, the in-game, you're able to perform this pretty well, and you can then extend that goal from 30 to even 40 and even climb. So that's a quick example of how that happens. And of course, low self-efficacy would break this. So that's why it is important to have the high self-efficacy that will definitely help you make these decisions more quicker, easier. Yeah. And there's some other strategies that evidence-based that have with instructional drilling. So there's where coaches provide performance aids, physical guides. We also have like goal setting. So this is like realistic performance standards, really trying to raise the standard or where you're aiming at. Things like hard conditioning, modeling confidence. Of course, rewards. This is where coaches kind of reinforce positive self-talk and positivity all over. And of course, in that positive self-talk, just catching the negatives and making sure that you don't dwell too much because that can really affect performance. And these, as we mentioned before, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and physical state. So just in closing, I would just like to once again say that self-efficacy is your belief in executing sport actions or how well you can do this. It drives motivation, behavior, and behavior drives performance. Of course, higher beliefs means resilience, focus, and of course, performance in the end. And we can start now. So all these things that we mentioned, definitely look at them, building mastery, goals, watching your peers, coaches really providing that positive feedback. And finally, the main message I would like to leave is your brain is also a muscle. So the same way you train your legs, your upper body, everything, your brain is a muscle and it is what really sets you apart from others. And that's what we're looking for today. How can we take this team to the next level? And yeah, so thank you for your time today. I hope that you did learn a lot and enjoyed this presentation. And I'll see you again soon when we discuss another topic. All right, thank you.